On episode 3, we talk about earnest money deposits, photography, and cap rates. Thanks for tuning in to Ask a Realtor episode 3. My name is Jason Cassity with City Consulting Group in downtown San Diego. Fun fact about the number 3, my San Francisco Giants now have 3 World Series in the last 5 years.
Kevin asks, what is earnest money?
Good question. Earnest money deposit, EMD, good faith deposit, whatever the cool kids are calling it these days. In layman's terms, it's pretty much a security deposit. So basically, once your buyer and your seller have come to an agreement on the purchase price and the terms, and you open up escrow, as we've talked about in one of our previous videos. Once escrow is opened up, the buyer has 72 hours to turn in their earnest money deposit. Basically, again, it's pretty much like a security deposit. It's held in escrow by that third party until the end of the transaction. And so if the transaction goes through, that earnest money deposit is applied to the down payment as a credit. And except in the case of a VA loan where there's no down payment, that would just get credited back to the buyer. At any time during that escrow, if the buyer backs out, that earnest money would stay with the seller as just like a security deposit would stay, just to cover for the time off the market or whatnot. Now, there are some contingencies in place to protect the buyer. They're all negotiable, but generally you have an inspection contingency, an appraisal contingency, and a loan contingency. And if any of those 3 things aren't met during the contingency time frame, the buyer can back out and they get their earnest money deposit back. So it is protected in that sense. Once you hit the 17 or 21 day, depending on what you negotiated, once you hit the contingency removal time frame and you take away your contingencies, that earnest money deposit is now unprotected. To which case, if you back out after that point, you lose your earnest money deposit. So just think of it like a security deposit. It's the best way to really kind of explain it. Good question.
Alan asks, should I use professional photography to sell my house?
Good question. Do you need to take professional photography? Yes, totally. If you're listing a home, whether you're doing for sale by owner, you're an agent listening to this, or thinking about becoming an agent or whatnot, yeah, every listing you take, you better be using professional photography. I mean, in this day and age, with all the Zillow, Trulia, all the stuff that your home is marketed on, your photos will go everywhere. And we've all seen the funny news articles or things like that of bad real estate pictures. It really is like that out there. I mean, you can scroll through the MLS and you see people who use their phone, iPhones, but sometimes even worse, they're blurry. That's atrocious. I don't understand that. I can't imagine how somebody who, as a seller, if I'm hiring someone to sell my home and I'm paying what sometimes 4, 5, 6%, whatever the commission is, and you're not going to bring in a professional photographer, you've got to be kidding me. Our phones are getting great. I mean, this camera that I'm shooting on is fantastic, but it doesn't match the eye and the lighting know-how and all the stuff that a professional photographer brings in. And I'm not talking about bringing in aerial drones, all that stuff. I mean, case by case basis, you might use that, you might not. But the baseline on every listing you take, you've got to be using a professional photographer. It's so important. So yeah, don't skimp around that corner.
Funrise asks, what's a cap rate?
What's a cap rate? Good question, actually. So cap rate stands for capitalization rate. Basically, it's used when you're talking about rental properties. Investors talk about the cap rate a lot. It is the rate of return that they expect to see on a rental property. And so to get that, you're going to take the list price or the purchase price of the home. You're going to take your estimated rent. So if you already have the home, you can calculate out your cap rate by taking the rent times 12. Some people will times it by 11 to build in, because you're going to have a month of vacancy in there. But you could do it, your rent times 12. That's your gross rent for the year. And then you subtract out, the property taxes, the HOAs, and some people will do a 10% maintenance amount as well, 10% a year, a maintenance amount. And then afterwards you'll have your net rent. And then you take your net rent and you divide it by your purchase price. and that's your capitalization rate or your cap rate. And so generally, I know back when I first started, 6% was kind of like the minimum of a cap rate that investors would look for. I think that some of the distressed properties have dried up a little bit, so now I've seen investors willing to take a cap rate of 5% or even 4%, because investors will also pick up equity growth in their homes. So they're going to be getting paid their cap rate every year, but then they're also going to be getting equity growth in their home. But that's the cap rate. So when someone says that, if you think about it, you get a 6% cap rate, you're not getting 6% in your savings account. So as long as you're beating your savings account or your CD, you're making more than you would be there. So yeah, that's the cap rate. Great question. Thanks for tuning in. That's episode 3. Make sure you subscribe to our channel or here, and we look forward to coming back soon. Thanks.